Today was the day. After weeks of attending meetings and getting to know people, we were finally attending our first Tea Party protest. I met Vanessa, my friend from class, at Harvard Square, and we boarded the subway and shot across the Charles River and into Boston. We emerged beaming with excitement on the Boston Common, and we followed that bright red line that marked the Freedom Trail to the Massachusetts State House. The sun was shimmering off of that gilded gold roof, and it made it almost seem as if it was not a freezing cold March day. But you have to take that with a grain of salt, since I'm from North Carolina, and every day in Boston, to me, was remarkably cold. Well, as people started gathering on the steps of the State House, a bald man with a guitar sang songs about freedom. Others were busily making signs, crafting clever messages with bitter wit. One of the few young people there, a guy named Austin, was crowned with a massive and dirty tricorn hat, and he held a sign that said, "I'm diabetic. I can't drink the Kool-Aid." Well, once people got there, we started our march through Beacon Hill and to the Liberty Hotel, where Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, was headlining a Democratic fundraiser. The healthcare debate had reached a fevered pitch, and the Greater Boston Tea Party wanted to greet the Speaker in Boston to show their contempt for her policies and her tactics. Kristen Varley, the president of the group, had a sign that said, "Reconciliation will not be forgiven." She told me that referenced both a Catholic practice and a congressional procedure the Democrats were hoping to use to pass their health care reform. She said that Pelosi, like herself, was a Catholic, so she'd get the pun. Well, we finally reached the Liberty Hotel, and that's when the chanting and the jeering began. And once Nancy Pelosi's motorcade pulled up to the hotel, the yelling reached a fevered pitch, and in the middle of all this noise and excitement, I'm fighting the urge to yell out, "Thank you, Madam Speaker." For you see, I happen to lean on the progressive side of the political spectrum. I thought the problem with the impending Obamacare was not that it was a step towards socialism, as did many of the people there that day, but rather that it cemented the influence of insurance companies in a healthcare system that I think should be about giving the greatest care to the greatest number of people, not about making the greatest profit. But those are my political views. My passion in life is creating a stronger democracy. I think more people need to be engaged in the system, and it's only then that the system will ever truly work for its people. So that meant in early 2010, when the Tea Party was first getting its public attention, I was not blogging about how terrible it was or trying to find George Soros' phone number to figure out how to work with him to smash it, but rather out on the Liberty Hotel with a bunch of Tea Party protesters. And I guess it worked out in the end, for Vanessa Williamson, my friend from class, and I went on to publish one of the first academic studies of the Tea Party. And then once I left Harvard, Vanessa went on with her professor to publish this incredible book about the entire national Tea Party movement. But back before then, in the spring of 2010, when we were standing out on that cold March day in front of the Liberty Hotel, what Vanessa and I were looking for is something called social capital. Social capital is the idea that, like the money in our pockets has value, or like the education in our brains has value, or like the railroad tracks that carry our goods from sea to shining sea have value, so too do the connections we make with other people have value, in that they increase our productivity both as individuals and as groups. On an individual level, this just makes sense. We often say that no man is an island. We have to rely on other people to some extent to make it through life. We count on others to take us to the doctor when we're sick, or to help us find a job when we're unemployed, or just to help us through a rough emotional time in life. On a group level, this social capital is just as powerful. A candidate cannot win an election without connecting to the right groups of people. We can't get a street light or a stop sign installed in our hometown unless we know who to talk to. As a country, we cannot make the tough decisions we must about our economy or foreign policy or health care if we do not know that the people with whom we're working are trustworthy people who are not just looking after their own interests, but also those of society. The problem we have as a society, though, is that these networks of trustworthiness and reciprocity, in other words, our social capital, has been declining in America for over 40 years. We don't know, much less trust our neighbors. Most of us don't join organizations that help us get to know our fellow citizens. For the most part, we don't join in our local government or civic organizations. In the famous words of my professor and mentor, Robert Putnam, more and more often we are simply bowling alone. Now, at this point, you might be saying, John, what possible connection is there between the decline of bowling clubs in America and the state of American democracy? Well, I would say, and it's actually the core thesis that I'm trying to present to you today, that we must make those connections at the local level and make a difference in our communities and in our neighborhoods in order for that larger system to be at all functional. If blacks and whites and Hispanics can't come together at the local bowling alley, if Methodists and Baptists can't cooperate on a bake sale, if the Republicans and Democrats can't come together on a school board to do what's right for the children in their county, then we can't hope to save Medicare or Social Security. We can't have the deep conversations necessary to resolve our immigration crisis. We can't work together to revive our struggling economy and establish ourselves as world leaders in the 21st century. That's why I was so excited about the prospect of a Tea Party. Here, in an age of political and social inaction, people were acting. Now, they may not have been advocating for the same solutions that I would, but they were out there together, trying to make a difference. I met Austin, that guy with the tricorn hat, who said that he joined the Tea Party because he was tired of yelling at his television screen. Sure, he was still yelling, but he was yelling with other people as part of a group. I met Steve, an engineer who had been laid off of his job, and he said that he wanted to give back to his community rather than going stir-crazy at home. That's admirable. I met Debbie, a dear, sweet, elderly Pentecostal lady who said that she had attended a Glenn Beck rally in Washington, D.C., and there she had seen a vision of what heaven was going to look like. She said people greeted each other on the streets, which I can tell you does not happen in Boston. They helped each other through the crowd, which for someone like Debbie probably meant a lot. She even said that they left the public spaces cleaner than when they had found them, which I suspect was a glamorization of the rally, but it was nonetheless genuinely felt by her. So as you can see, the Tea Party was wonderful at establishing this social capital that I love. But I got to admit, when they started talking politics, it made me want to cringe. And when I think about the political results of the Tea Party, it makes me want to cry. Right here in North Carolina, the General Assembly, which was largely elected by this Tea Party, has been instrumental in gutting education, in focusing on social issues in a time of economic crisis, and has worked hard to take rights away from North Carolinians when it should have been working hard to put them into jobs. In a national level, the Tea Party has further polarized our national discourse and has made intransigence a value, to the point at which progress for any political agenda has been rendered almost impossible. I don't want you to think that just because the title of my talk says that I am in love with the Tea Party, that I think that our state or our nation is anything but politically worse off because of the Tea Party's influence. But what I want us to talk about today is not that we're politically worse off, but why we're politically worse off. I don't think it's because this group of citizens was engaged. No, I think it's because not enough citizens were engaged. Democracy is not made for one group to have all of the control. It's a system set up for compromise, one that works best when where different interests are subject to strong challenges and vociferous debate, where one group will never win all the time and where no group will ever completely lose. The problem is that at this moment in American history, when social capital was in a wasteland, one group was able to develop it enough and through it gain access to enough financial and political capital that it was able to exert a disproportionate amount of political control. But the last thing we should be doing is denouncing the Tea Party for doing exactly what we all should have been doing in the first place. So, my challenge to you today is to go from here and connect with other people, like the Tea Party did. Form some social capital. Make a difference. If this scrappy group of Bostonians can elect a Republican to Teddy Kennedy's Senate seat in Massachusetts, you can do anything. But you might be saying, how do we go about forming some robust and effective social capital? Well, in the social capital world, we see two different types of this stuff. The first is called bonding social capital, and this is when you're connecting with people who are like yourself. We say it's what gets you by. These are the people who are going to bring you chicken noodle soup when you're sick. They're the people who you're going to call up when you want to protest Nancy Pelosi at the Liberty Hotel. This is one of the reasons why the Tea Party was so remarkable in its success. It was able to coalesce a group of white, middle-aged to older, middle-class conservatives, and they were able to band together to create remarkable political change. The other type of social capital is called bridging social capital, and this is when you're connecting with people who are different than yourself. It's when atheists and evangelicals, Latinos and Asians, liberals and conservatives get together that we can see true progress in our society, and we say that bridging capital helps get us ahead. This is one of the reasons why I think the Tea Party has reached a ceiling of support and influence in America, because often it's not willing to connect with other groups. If it had been more proactive in engaging Occupy or the ACLU or even some Democrats, it may have been able to accomplish even more. So as you go from here today to save American democracy, find some groups that you can connect with on a deep level and form some bonds with them. If you think that's the Tea Party, if you think they are God's gift to America, then go out and support them. They need your help. They are working hard in 2012, and you can be a resource to them. If, on the other hand, you think that the Tea Party is the most dangerous force in American politics, then get off your duff and find some people who think like you do and make a difference with them. But whichever side of the aisle you fall on and whichever groups you're forming bonds with, make sure to look on the other side of the aisle and build some bridges. Connect with people who are different than yourself. I can attest that my greatest personal growth as a researcher of the Tea Party came as a result of the bridging social capital I formed with these folks. We may disagree on a whole host of issues, but I found that at the end of the day, these people are, for the most part, good-natured, hardworking Americans who are trying to make their communities better places. And we would all be better citizens, and America would be a better nation if we learned to work together more often. Now, you may also be sitting here saying, John, I hate politics. Would you just shut up about them? Well, if that's you, this message is still for you. You're not off the hook. Because remember, my message is not that America's democracy is faltering because we're not connecting enough to politics, but that we're not connecting enough to each other. Just as important, probably more important than connecting to some fleeting group like the Tea Party or Occupy, is getting to know your neighbors, going to church, joining a service organization. These real ties among real people in real communities are the fabric that holds our society together. And they are the bonds that are going to support any lasting political or social change. So, go from here today and form some social capital. You may make a difference. Hopefully, you'll have a lot of fun. And maybe, just maybe, you will help transform American democracy. I know, it's a big goal, but you never know the power of social capital. After all, it did cause a liberal to fall in love with the Tea Party. Thank you.